The Miami Dolphins have finally signed, sealed, and delivered an upgrade to the tight end position. Me and Neal will talk about it as we dive fin too deep today with all of you as well. We will also talk about Xavien Howard basically closing the door on a reunion in Miami. Also, did the Dolphins meet with one of the top center prospects of the draft? And are they doing their due diligence? We'll talk about that and why the tweet might have even been deleted by the prominent ESPN plug. That, all of that, so much more. Please do us the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. As always, let's get into it.
Touchdown! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! He's got field on the near side, man open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again! Touchdown!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one. As you come through, please do us the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you are new. About 140 of you on YouTube right now watching, and we are starting to rack them up on X. So thank you all for coming through. Neal, it's been a up and down last 7 days for the Miami Dolphins. We got some good news today that we'll talk about. But I want you to tell the fans of the channel, the subscribers of the channel, they haven't had your thoughts on where we're at with Wilkins and also Jerome Baker and what happened there.
Yeah, on the Wilkins front, man, I think, look, the Dolphins are trying to get it done. And, whether you want it to happen or not, I don't think that door's closed. I've seen a lot of people saying, like, bon voyage, nice knowing you. I think that this is going to go all the way up to the 11th hour where, until he hits free agency, I'm not counting him as gone. I just think that the Dolphins are prideful to keep him here and have been working on it. And, deals have a time, they have a tendency to materialize fast when deadlines come, right? So I just keep an eye on that. And, Jerome Baker, I think it's the right move. I'm a big fan of him. I even had options where, give him a new deal, try to keep him around. But I think that has run its course here. I think, we all fell in love again with Baker because, the performance on Hard Knock, he looked awesome. But I think one of those things that, we have a new sheriff in town on the defensive side of the ball. And I think Anthony Weaver is going to have every opportunity to actually bring the players he wants in for this defense. And, the Dolphins, I don't think they're done with releases. I think there's going to be a plethora of restructures that are still down the beaten path here in the next 2 days. But, I'll say this, the defense is going to look a lot different in 2024 because, we know it's Wilkins. We know it's Baker. We don't know what's going to happen on Andrew Van Ginkel. We know he lost a future Dolphins Ring of Honor cornerback. Deshaun Elliott's still an unrestricted free agent. So is Raekwon Davis. So there's a lot of wood to chop on the defensive side of the ball. So I would say it's going to be very interesting in the next 7 days as a Miami Dolphins fan.
How do you see linebacker playing out? Do you see, because listen, the projection for Patrick Queen is like 16, 18 million a year. And I mean, and if they were going to be aggressive over him. Basically, what I've said on this channel is you could structure it so that money doesn't start kicking into year 2 when David Long, his contract is going to be up. I'm not about giving 16 to 18 million dollars for Patrick Queen right now. He didn't play at this level before Roquan got there. Listen, I like some of his traits. I liked him coming out of college. What are your thoughts on? Do you think the draft maybe at 55 that linebacker is still very much in play, or do you think this is something they're looking to address in free agency? Because really, we got no depth, because you can even cut Duke Riley and save some money right now, and then you're literally left with Channing Tindall and David Long Jr.
Yeah, first of all, I think Patrick Queen's going to be a Seahawk. I think Zachary Orr is going to, or not Zachary Orr, Mike McDonald's going to take him over there. I'd be shocked if that's a move that doesn't happen.
Because they let Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner both walked.
Both are unrestricted free agents.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. I will say that I do think on Dolphins Twitter that Pat Queen is overrated, because I agree.
I want Frankie Lavu, baby.
Yeah, he didn't play at the level that he did until Roquan got there. But I like his slow start and his explosion kind of reminds me of exactly what happened to Christian Wilkins here in Miami, to be honest. I personally, if it made sense for McCap, would be a big advocate of Patrick Queen, but I don't think.
Wouldn't he hurt the compensatory picks that we'd get though?
100%. Yeah. And I think what we're seeing with some of the moves that Dolphins have already made and are going to make is that they're operating with that in mind. And you can do cut players from other teams. You can sign your own players, and it doesn't impact that compensatory formula. But I'm interested because you know what I actually think the most likely scenario is if Jerome Baker doesn't get gobbled up, the Dolphins might try to sign him for the cheap as a post-June signing.
Because they already agreed on a pay cut, right? They just didn't agree on a number.
So yeah, I think that is. But I don't think, man. Because here's what I'm under the belief that they're not going to spend the first round pick on an offensive line. I just think that we all anticipate that, and I think it's going to be a defensive piece, whether it's a defensive tackle or a pass rusher.
I'll go this far. I think there is a chance, but I think the only offensive line piece they'd take at 21, knowing Greer, it's a tackle. They are not
tackle.
Chris Greer,
a versatile piece that could play tackle later.
Yeah, Chris Greer has never drafted an interior player in the first round.
Right. And look, and there's going to be guys at 55 that you plug and play as a starter too. And that's where I see them going. But, maybe there's a trade back scenario where they take a guy in the back half. But as much as we, the guy who I think they would take is Troy Fountain. And I was one of the first to kind of come to the forefront with that. And I think it is that versatility to kick out the tackle. That's
or Graham Barton.
Graham Barton's a guy that they like a lot of teams.
21 is so rich, though, for Graham Barton, in my opinion.
But this is why I love this year's draft, man. This is why I'm so excited, because I know that somebody who's really good that doesn't deserve to be at 21 is going to be there. The Dolphins could get a robbery, but they could also move up. If I shared this with you offline that I've heard that Olo Fashanu is going to fall to the middle of the first round. If he's there when, let's say Seattle's on the board at 16, and you're the Dolphins, and you can move up for something that's not a back.
Oh my God, give me.
Right. That's where I'm saying, if it's an offensive tackle that falls on their lap, the Dolphins might take a pick that surprises you and do the old Laramie Tunsil treatment where they start their career inside and kick out like J.C. Latham, who I've heard they view as a guard. But I also like it because they could trade up for a player, but they could also move back and acquire picks. There's really not much the Dolphins could do to piss me off with this draft pick, except if they went and reached on a corner like Nate Wiggins or something like that.
Oh God,
that would rub me the wrong way. But there's a lot of avenues they could take that would make.
Or if they drafted the wrong linebacker at 21, that would hurt too.
Sure.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, man. Hey, 4 days and the tampering window opens.
It's gonna be awesome, man. And that's where it's hard to do a draft prediction for the Dolphins because I have no idea what we're working with. I just don't.
Bro, my first big board is usually out by now, and it's not out. And you know why I'm glad I didn't drop it? It was going to be tight end.
Right.
And then after today, I'm and now I think it's going to be, I think my first big board is going to come either this weekend or this upcoming week after the first couple of days of free agency die down. I would say they're going to be edge or defensive tackle. I think that's probably the safest route to go right now because I don't see them spending big money on edge, and I don't see them spending big money on defensive tackle to get those compensatory picks.
Well, I pinned a mock that I did, a 2-rounder last night, and I do it organically, man. I don't have a player in mind for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Like you'll see people that do drafts, and they penciled in Brock Bowers, and then they work their way back. And when I got on the board, man, Dallas Turner was there, and I was like, all right, that's the pick. I was Dallas pick, and then I took Cooper Bebe in round 2 from Kansas State. And if they walked away with Dallas Turner and Cooper Bebe, I'd be ecstatic with that type of draft. So I just did one before free agency to see how the board would flow. And what my biggest takeaway is, it wasn't who the Dolphins took that got me excited. It was who was available. Latu was there. Jerzon Newton, who I think I'm the leader right now of the clubhouse of being the biggest Jerzon Newton fan.
Johnny.
Yeah, I think he's going to be an elite defensive player at the next level. The more I watch him, the more I like him. And if we do lose Chris,
he's my DT number 1. I don't know why.
By far, for me.
I know you heard rumblings that Byron Murphy might be the first defensive tackle off the board. Newton would be the first guy off me. And I think an instant guy, he won't be there at 55. Man, if Fisk is there at 55, that's an interesting pick too.
Yeah. He got hot at the right time. I see Detroit at the end of their first round.
You know what it reminds? Imagine pairing him and Seiler. That feels like you'd be putting 2 clones on the field.
Right.
That's what it feels like when you look at them,
pail
right?
type players. But but Fisk does have
crazy athleticism,
better athleticism than Sealer, and that's not a knock on Sealer, but he tested out of the world in Indianapolis.
It was nuts. Listen, we have a bunch of you already. We have 280 on YouTube, about 271 on Twitter watching right now. Total of about 558 people. Smash the like button. Subscribe if you are new. So let's hop into this. Let's start it off, and we're going to pivot we're going to talk about Xavien Howard here first. And Xavien Howard, we was on the Joe Rose show today. And the Joe Rose show even tweeted out, Xavien Howard tells us on 560 WQAM, on a possible return to the Dolphins, quote unquote, that door is closed. So Xavien Howard, he's not returning to the Miami Dolphins. At least that's the way he sees it. And shout out to a few people here before we really get into the crux of things. Shout out to Knight. He says X is like a whiny ex-girlfriend. Well, that's you're letting them know how you feel, aren't you? And then shout out to Scotty. I believe is it Scotty Joe, I think? Let me see here. Yeah. It is Scotty Joe. He says fins up and he donates $3.89. Your thoughts here? I have heard and I've reported that this team, the word I heard coming out of the combine, Neil, was that this team was totally okay with going into the next season with Kohu, Ramsey, and Cam Smith as their top 3, unless a generational player like Patrick Surtain becomes available here. That's the word that I've gotten. Then they want to build that defensive depth behind it. What are your thoughts on X shutting the door? Because X even threw a further little bit of a, salt in the wound by saying he wants to go to a team to win playoff games with. He's gonna be a Houston Texan, isn't he?
Yeah, I think there could be a Christian Wilkins, Saquon Barkley, and Xavien Howard arrival in Houston, honestly. But I'll say this about Xavien Howard: he is one of my favorite Dolphins of all time. He's probably on the border of being a top 10 guy. I don't understand why the sense of bitterness from him when this organization took care of him. He threatened to hold out. We took care of him again. I guess I just don't get it, man. And I was a big component after he was pretty much robbed of the defensive MVP that after his 10-pick season, right?
Yeah.
And after the next year when we had him, I thought that was good to keep him here. But I think we held on to him a year too long, to be honest. You end up releasing a guy like Xavien Howard because there's not a lot of people line up to trade for him at that cost. I think we were paying for the player that he was, not the player he was going to be. Look, you can't stay on the football field. I don't know why he would be bitter about the Dolphins when they've made him very rich. And, I think he's a warrior. He played through injury. I respect him. I want him to see him on the Ring of Honor. I will go to the game when he's on the Ring of Honor and be happy as hell for him. I don't understand the constant jabs, and honestly, I'll be 100% honest. I don't want him back at this point of his career anyway. And I think one of the things you have to learn to be a good NFL franchise, and the Patriots have done
When
it
to let
so
go.
when to say goodbye. And we said goodbye to Xavien Howard. Not only does that give us the cap room to sign our draft class and buy some groceries after June 1, his departure opens up future cap years and more money for us as well. And I think it's one of those things that, I don't think it's in an awful standing, but like I just hope that in his departure from Miami, the team appreciates the hell out of him. I hope he reciprocates that, because I don't want this to be some kind of war with a player that left. Look, man, we loved you. You're here for a long time. It didn't work at the end. And now you have your freedom. And I think the Dolphins did them right. They got rid of him early so they could start fielding conversations with teams. The Dolphins handled it as professional as you can. I mean, look, maybe you wanted to stay here and that's why you're bitter. It's unfortunate, but I think right now that they did the right move. They had the contingency plan when they got Jalen Ramsey, and the show goes on. And hopefully you come in the wild card round, or the divisional round, and you come into Miami and we send you home again, and you don't win another playoff game because of us. So I like, that's where I am. I respect the hell out of him, and I think he's a great player. And I again, like, if he had had injuries, with the way that I think he's the best defensive back at creating turnovers since Ed Reed. So I say this with all respect. He's a hell of a football player. I love him. Best of luck to your future endeavors. Isn't that what they say when the WWE used to cut people on their website? So, best of luck to your future.
On your future endeavors. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Whatever it was. So, but it sucks though, because I think it's one of those things that I hope there's not bad blood, but it seems like there is. So.
Was that Chris Jones report earlier today fake?
Yeah, it was a fake. Him signing. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was a.
I was gonna say 4 years for 119. Are you serious? That's like holy jeez. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a fake. God, man, it's been good lately without those fake burner accounts. Like,
I
but
know.
people are good at making them, man. Because I'll tell you what, I always triple check now, because I've been burnt and caught so many times with them, man. Like,
Dude,
they
I had
get you.
someone when Schefter reported we were meeting with Jonnu a couple days ago. Someone said, "Oh, it's a fake Schefter account." I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's 10.8 million like subscribers."
Right.
All right, so let's get into it here. We got to clear up some air continuously, because it seems like there's some people out here not keeping the facts with the people. So, the Miami Dolphins have been hoping a tight end can help elevate their offense in 2024. The first opportunity goes to former Falcons tight end Jonnu Smith, who lands a 2-year deal with the Miami Dolphins. And furthermore, on that deal is $4.075 million per year for 2 years. So $8.15 million over 2, with a max value up to $10 million. So maxing out at about $5 million per year. Listen, I got to get this out of the way. All of you people who listen to what other people say, who don't watch film and just read you PFF grades, coming out here trying to say Jonnu Smith is not a good blocker. I don't know what the hell you're talking about and what the hell y'all have been watching. Watch the film. Jonnu Smith is a fantastic inline blocker. Stop. I don't know who's out here. I know Alain Poupard is apparently one of them who said, all they're doing is rifling off PFF grades. They never watched a lick of all 22 of this guy. Okay, so stop. So if you watch the film, Jonnu Smith is a more than capable and competent blocker. In fact, he's on Durham Smythe's level as an inline blocker, if you really want to go there, okay? So I don't know who's out here spinning these narratives, just reading PFF grades and acting like those are gospel. This is why every Monday, when I bring the PFF grades up here after a game, what do I say? The grades that I only hold any weight towards are the ones that match my eye test. And how many times do we come up here and Austin Jackson had a good week last year and he's graded in like the 50s? And you're like, what are you talking about? Okay. So, they've given you how they grade quarterbacks. PFF has never given you the formula of how they grade tackles, or tight ends, or defensive tackles. And what have I said? You got to also remember, a lot of these people that are grading are volunteers. They're not getting paid. It's almost like an intern work where they're asked to work 20 to 30 hours a week. How do I know this? Because back in 2020, I did some work with PFF, and I saw how they operate. So people out here are trying to just crap on Jonnu Smith as a blocker because they read something, a PFF grade. Stop. Film always rules over a PFF grade. Please.
Yeah, and for me, man, this is Chris Greer hitting a triple before the legal tampering period ever began, right? Like I'm not going to get on here and say that Jonnu Smith is a top 5 tight end in football, but
But tell the people what you thought when he signed. See, people seem to forget, Neil, the big move a couple years ago for Mac Jones was what? Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, right?
And honestly, and Henry was probably the better player at the time. But there's a part of being a football fan where you have to project how people are going to do in different environments.
Yeah.
And what gets me excited, this guy's a yak monster. I feel like we tip our hands when we have our tight ends on the field with what we're doing offensively because our tight ends are so one-dimensional that Jonnu's going to be the most complete tight end we have at the moment he steps on the field for us. But what I view as a guy that is something that we haven't had here, and I actually think we'll see Jonnu Smith's best years in Miami because I feel like he's exactly what this team needs. And the deal at $4 million per year
That's a great deal.
Is a very great deal for a guy like Jonnu Smith. And I'm often brought back to this memory in 2019 when the Ravens were 13-3 and they hosted a Ryan Tannehill playoff game, and Jonnu Smith made one of the most amazing catches I've ever seen in my life. And
talking about that end zone catch or no?
Yeah, that end zone catch. Yeah, I mean, and it was a game changer in that game. I think this is a solid triple for them. And he's the best. He's the third best pass catcher on this football team now. Right.
Well, well, look at this. Okay, I brought this up. Okay, because there's someone in the chat. I've never heard of him. Okay, well, let me show you this.
I don't know how you haven't heard.
I don't know how you've never heard of Jonnu Smith.
Yeah,
but anyways,
I don't.
Look at this. Name the last time we had a tight end that could do this, Neil. Name the last time we had a tight end that could take a 60-yard screen to the house.
And you know what? The popular answer to that is going to be Randy McMichael, but that wasn't his game.
No,
you know what I mean? That wasn't his game. I don't know the answer to that question.
Gesicki couldn't even do this, and he was a pass catcher.
Keith Jackson in the 90s.
That's literally.
Clay. I'll say this. I do think Charles Clay is a good example.
I think he's more of a red. I don't see him taking screens to the house, Charles Clay, though, but I'd give you Keith Jackson.
Yeah, Keith Jackson. But yeah, I would 100. I mean, look, this is a really good move. It doesn't impact your compensatory pick formula because he was released by Atlanta. You fill a big need. I think that look, if Brock Bowers is somehow on the board when the Dolphins drafted 21, I still don't hesitate to run up to the board and make that pick. But what I think is the tight end room is way better than it was last year. I would say we had the worst tight end room in football last year, and adding a player to that level, I'm excited about to see what this guy can do.
Dude, listen, and you know me.
It's a great signing.
Yeah, in 2 years, $4.075 million a year. I mean, it's a low cost, potentially high reward signing. I mean, he's coming off his best year since he left the Titans. He had over 530 yards last year, and look at what his quarterback situation in Atlanta was.
We paid $10-point-something million on a franchise tag to Mike Gesicki a couple years back. I don't know what his stats are. I don't have them in front of me. I will put a wager out there now that Jonnu Smith outproduces Mike Gesicki's production on that franchise tag year. I'll find out what it was right now.
No, Mike. Mike Gesicki. What did I? I think I might have tweeted it out. What was it? Mike Gesicki never. Here, I'll tell you right now.
It was 2022 season. Let's do a little live look.
Let me see. I know I went over it here. Well, no, but if you go look at Gesicki's never put up as many yards as Jonnu Smith did last year in Atlanta.
This can't be real. Mike Gesicki on the franchise tag only had 362 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, because
that
what would
season.
happen? What would happen?
And he played all game. He played every game.
But Gesicki would only step up or be targeted when guys got hurt because he didn't separate enough.
Right. Wow. So yeah, I will. Yeah. Whatever.
What's
the
his
bet
career
is,
high for yardage?
It was 860 something when his first year. I remember that's where I was like, oh, dude, we got a tight end for the future. Jonnu's not going to get there.
When was the last time he put up 500 yards, Gesicki?
Oh, I don't know. I pulled it down.
You got it in front of you.
I took it down. I mean, I'm quick.
Well, I know that one year where DVP and Preston went down, he balled out a little bit. Wasn't his career year? Are you sure he put up 800 yards? I thought his career year was with Tua.
780 2021. That's what it was.
That was with Tua.
Yep. But God, man, he progressively.
Yeah, but look at it. Okay.
Oh.
What are his yard totals other than 781? Give me those.
2018 he had 202 and he only started 7 games. In 2019 he had 570 and 5 touchdowns.
Yep.
2020 he had 703 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's the year I'm talking where I was like, oh my God, we got something.
Yeah, because everyone got hurt, right?
Yep. 2021 780 and 2 touchdowns. 2022 362 and 5, and in New England this year, man, 244 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Well, look at in New England both years, Jonnu 294 and 245. This year with Atlanta 582. Yeah. Right? Look at Tennessee. His last year with Tennessee 448 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, and that's where I think he's a 500-yard,
he's a
touchdown guy.
He's a 500 to 600-yard guy in this offense, is what I see him as.
With 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right.
And he gives us something in the red zone, and he gives us something after the catch we don't have.
Well, and look, 5 touchdowns from a receiver not named Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle is very welcomed in this offense.
Yeah, very, very. So
and in every other scenario that he's been in, to be fair to Jonnu Smith, he has never played with the quarterback that we have that pushes the ball, the leading passer in yards, and he's never been on a team where it's Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill on the outside, right?
Yeah.
That's fair. You know what I mean? Like, for us to anticipate that I could see him eclipsing 700. If he stayed healthy and played all 17 games, I could see him getting up to over 700 yards. In this offense, man, bro, he might get 50 on one catch here and there for us, right? Like, he's gonna be eating against inferior talent than he's used to going up against.
Don't tease me. 495 of you on X watching right now, and then another 402 on YouTube right now. Appreciate each and every one of you coming through. Knight says Gesicki, 2,861 career yards. 800 yards in yak, 30% average, 3 yards per reception. Jonnu has 2,423 yards. He has 1,400 yards after the catch.
Whew.
Holy. Whoo. That's it, man. It's the yak, baby. The yak.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And he can block.
He's going to be a really good fit here. This is a good, savvy signing where you are I would like to add 2 to 3 other players that are that type of player that you're not going to break the bank for, but you can project them being very successfI'm in our scheme, and not just on offense, on the defensive side of the ball as well. This is a solid triple for me. I'm a tough grader. I don't want to say it's a home run, but I do think this is a move that when you scratch your head and you look at it, you're like, man, like, this guy could come into this system and be a very productive player.
For cheap.
And he's a good locker room guy too, man. I think he's a good locker room guy, a guy who's been battle tested, who's been around, he's sniffed and played in the playoffs. He comes from good coaching with Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick. Like, I think that's one thing to matter. He's a pro. He's a veteran, but he's still got a lot of gas in the tank. I just think it's a very good, savvy move for Chris Grier.
Rams just gave Kevin Dotson a deal.
How much?
3 years, $48 million, $16 a year.
So the $17 million that we've been saying on Robert Hunt's right in line. I was an old friend of ours was in a space saying that if whoever said the 17 number was wrong, old friend of ours, and looks like he's going to keep betting 0 against me.
The same friend last year who trying to steal info that I passed on to you about Jonathan Taylor, and also was crying when we ended up being so right about Christian Wilkins. Is that the same friend you're talking about?
I think so.
Oh my God. Oh, give anyone a mic and they think they know what they're doing.
And I want to be frank, like Robert Hunt is a way better player than Kevin Dotson, and I like Kevin Dotson.
Yeah.
So Robert Hunt is liked by the NFL more than
Well,
Kevin.
What was the word coming out of the NFL Combine? That Dotson, Robert Hunt, and there was another guard. There was like 3 or 4 guards that they said were all going to command.
Michael Nwanyu from the Patriots is a guard
tackle that they were all going to command $16+ million a year potentially.
But here's what I'll say with this deal. If you're not signing Christian Wilkins, and this isn't what I want to do, this is what, and this part is what I want to do, I go and sign Robert Hunt to that deal right now. I would do it right now.
Okay, listen, here's the conversation that we've had, though. So I'm going to have it with you. Do you really see them giving them more money a year than the $12 million they gave Austin Jackson to be tackle, or the $15 million they're giving Armstead to be? You don't give guards more money than bookend tackles. That's why I think they're running into the problem they're running into.
I don't think they're going to.
And I know for a fact they offered him $10 million a year in October, and he said no thanks.
Yeah.
And why? I mean, you know what was going to happen. I've talked about this. I don't know if you've heard me talk about this. His camp saw the defensive tackle market spike last year. They knew what's the balancing act. The interior offensive line market now has to spike to balance it out, right? You're not going to have $12 million guys blocking $25 million a year guys. That's just not going to happen. And now what's happening? Now guard is responding and it's spiking.
Right. I mean, look,
that's
man.
Where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you're going to see a lot more of these teams keep their own here, though, man. I think we all anticipate this big flood of money in free agency. Look at your free agent board now versus what it was a week ago with all the tags and everything. Like, I think there's going to be – I think Chris Jones is going to stay in Kansas City, and that's a huge domino to fall.
He said he wants to stay, right?
Yeah, and like if the Miami did keep Wilkins, suddenly who's the best player in free agency? Daniel Hunter? Right, like Burns is tagged, Josh Allen's tagged, Matabuke.
But they're not going to go spend that money because of the comp picks now.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think so either. I think.
Would you go after a guy like Mitch Morse?
I saw that in the chat.
Well, no. The reason why I asked this is because I asked this to Richmond in ball game yesterday. I would target a few of those Buffalo players on 1-year deals and say, hey, you want to come to Miami, make some money, and stick it to the Bills?
Yeah, I would take Mitch Morse. I don't want Jordan Poyer this go around. I did last year. I don't want him this year because I think there's better options. I'd actually want to keep Deshaun Elliott over Jordan Poyer. And I already texted you this today, and it's not going to happen. But my pipe dream is if we could find a way.
It's not happening, bro.
I know. I love Justin Simmons, though, man.
He's one of my favorite. Him and Derwin James. I cannot
believe that the Broncos. I think they're not going to go quarterback. I think they're going full tank this year. I think they're going full
Broncos
tank.
country. Let's ride.
Right. I think they're going to be awful.
Oh my God, that's terrible. The Miami Dolphins, though. Speaking of moves, they did. It's definitely not a replacement, but they signed a defensive tackle today, Xavien Nixon. And now we haven't gotten the terms. I haven't seen yet. He was a 5th-round pick in 2021 after playing at Iowa. Had 15 tackles and a half sack in 14 games over his first 2 seasons. He was waived in December of 2022. Then he was with the Seahawks for a little bit, but then he was out of the league all of 2023. So this is a camp body, let's be honest.
Right.
Now, you're actually quite high on him coming into the draft.
Yeah, and that's beauty over here on I have my 3 screens here. But here on this one right here, one of the cool things about being a nerd is I keep all my draft chronicles from previous years so that I can go back at them. When I saw this signing, I actually drew a blank, didn't remember the player, but I came in here and read my notes. And honestly, I had him as the 3rd best defensive tackle in the 21 class behind Christian.
Give me your top 5. Let me hear your top 5.
Yeah, it was Christian Barmore was one. I missed on this one. Levi Onwuzurike from
I remember. I was high on him too. Yeah.
My 3rd was Nixon from Colorado. My 4th was Jay Tufele from USC.
Yeah.
And my 5th was Marvin Wilson from Florida State, who was a Dolphin. But I will say this: I'm looking at this class.
Not good.
Oh, well, God, it was a bad class. Yeah, a really, really bad class. But I looked at him. I had him as the 55th overall player in that draft. And what I had was like his versatility, solid 3 technique, gets off the ball quick, is sound against the run, not going to give you a lot as a pass rusher, but has very active hands. That's kind of what my report was on him, and that's just my quick thing on him. So I don't think that this is bye Christian Wilkins. We got your replacement. I think, look, when you look at the foundation of this team, we need depth, we need cap bodies. A lot of these guys are lottery tickets, and you hope they hit. Who knows? This is probably an NFL minimum type of signing. I don't think, I don't read too much into it. At worst case scenario, it's a depth piece.
Yeah. I added with the other DT we recently signed. Who was it? Isaiah Mack.
Yeah, and he was an old Raven. And look, they're just trying to find bodies, man. They
Yeah,
need depth on the defensive line right now.
probably got
And
his Pilly and Siler. Basically, we don't even have Raekwon.
right, exactly. And like
Do you
I
think
don't.
that's another one no one's talking about that potentially comes back as Raekwon Davis on the cheap?
Yeah, well, he wants to be here, right? So that there's always that chance when someone wants to be here. Look, he's not a top 50 free agent for me. I don't know how long the line is going to be to get him. I mean, he's a young guy. He's a good football player. I would say he's under delivered a little bit of where we've taken him, but I think he was on the rise a little bit last year. I wouldn't hate to keep him here for a year or two. I think the first domino that's got to fall here is the Wilkins deal, and if they can't get him, I think they're going to pivot quick and keep a couple of their own.
So, can you explain to the people a little bit how the compensatory formula works,
Sure.
and explain to the people how, because I know there's some confusion. Explain to the people how, like, in terms of, what you can spend and where you can make splash signings and where you can do splash stuff, because people are probably lowering their expectations, thinking we're just going to get a bunch of scrubs to not affect the compensatory pick.
Yeah, well, look, so you can sign any player that has been released by another team, and it does not impact your compensatory pick formula. Like Jonnu Smith has 0 impact on the Miami Dolphins compensatory formula. You can trade for players, and it doesn't impact your compensatory formula. And you can re-sign your own players, and it doesn't impact your compensatory formula. Where it impacts your compensatory formula is when you sign unrestricted free agents, and the bigger you spend, the more it offsets. And I'll make sense of it. Let's just say you have Christian Wilkins and he gets $25 million a season, and you have Robert Hunt who gets 17, Van Ginkel who gets 10 to 12, and Connor Williams who gets 10. If Connor Williams signs after June 1st, it doesn't impact your compensatory formula in the positive. So if someone signed Connor Williams, you wouldn't get compensation credit for him. So take that out of the equation. Like if someone say you go out and sign Derrick Henry for $8 million, I know a lot of people want him, so I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
You would probably lose your Andrew Van Ginkel compensatory pick because you're spending 8 and he's getting 10 on the open market. It's not in your favor. But after that, like if you don't spend and you sign Jonnu Smith, you trade for. I'm just throwing this out, not saying these are happening, just rumors.
No, but keep mentioning the trade, because he mentioned this is why 21 might be in play.
Right, trade. If you trade for a Patrick Surtain or a L'Jarius Sneed, none of that stuff impacts your compensatory pick formula. And with Christian Wilkins looking like he is probably, I'm just looking, him and Kirk Cousins are going to get the most guaranteed money on the market if it stays the way it is, and that's with Chris Jones going back in my prediction. The Dolphins probably would get the 97th or 98th pick in the 2025 draft for Christian Wilkins. And honestly, if Robert Hunt gets signed for $17 million,
that's another 3rd round pick, isn't it?
He's going to be a 3rd round pick more than likely, because I'm looking at the free agents that could go for bigger, but like all these franchise tags, man, have wiped out a lot of potential spending. I mean, if Robert Hunt goes and gets $17 million a season, which looks very likely with Kevin Dotson signing, I would say that right now we could anticipate getting 2 3rd round picks in that draft, which is exciting.
Shout out to D Hugga. He just gifted 5 Finside the NFL memberships.
Wow.
Juan Cruz Moran, JC Arenas, Josh Hart, Mike Wright, and L Pad. So appreciate you for doing that, Diago.
Awesome, man.
Every year we've had big time compensatory picks, and by the big time I mean third round picks on the line. He spent smartly to not affect those picks. I don't see this. I don't see this changing, and I see this is why 21 might be in play for a trade if there's a quarterback on the board, et cetera, et cetera. Because they can add a star without affecting their compensatory picks. Because we know this. They've even talked about it. They've kind of said this is their last offseason to make big splashes before real money starts kicking in.
Yeah. So when you say make the trade, you're saying trade that pick for a player?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, look.
Well, he talked about it. Greer talked about it, right?
Yeah. I don't think it's ever off the table with the Miami Dolphins. And, they might have a player identified that we don't even know at this point, right? That, they just got back from Indy. There's a lot that's known coming out of Indy, and there's a lot that's not known. And a lot of these GMs are in meetings and talking to each other. Who knows, man, who could become available? Like here, for example, I'll give you a real life scenario that I'd pay attention to. Carolina is at an impasse with Brian Burns.
Yeah.
Franchise tagged him. Doesn't sound like he wants to be there. They don't want to pay him. If you told me right now the Dolphins could trade pick 21 for Brian Burns, I'd say, what's taking so long? Let's do it.
Yeah, but you already have Chubb and Phillips. You're not going to do that, and then pay him.
I think Chubb's gone after this year,
but then Phillips takes up that money. They're not going to. You're not going to be 2 years down the line with Phillips's money kicking in and Burns's contract kicking in.
Yeah, see, I think they could figure it out, man. And I'll say this: as much as I like Jalen Phillips, I take Brian Burns over Jalen Phillips too. And that's where I'm just saying,
listen, I think they're going to make a move. I don't think it's going to. No, I think they're going to make a move for a linebacker in free agent. Something tells me. I've heard from someone who sat at dinner with Dolphins officials at Prime 47 in Indianapolis.
It's a great spot.
Okay. They are comfortable with Kohu. They're comfortable with Ramsey and Cam Smith being the top three. Okay. So that tells me unless a generational player comes around, they're not making that investment. Then you look up front. I don't see them spending big money on edge because Chubb's going to be gone next year and they're going to flip Chubb and Phillips's money where Phillips is going to get off the rookie contract and eventually take Chubb's spot. David Long only has 1 year left. This is his last year and he's a free agent. And
right,
got no depth. Something just screams to me that they might be real players in the linebacker market.
Well, and look, and if that's the case, right, the name we started this whole show talking about makes a lot of sense due to his familiarity with Anthony
Does it
Weaver.
Because of the compensatory pick?
I mean, it would negate Robert Hunt.
Yeah, and I don't know if they'll do that. I think 16, 18 million still too, what I could see is, okay, you said Van Ginkel for 10 million, right? Frankie Lavu would cost you about 11.
Right.
That's an offset I would be down with. You know what I mean?
How about this name? Because he was just put in the chat, and literally I was going to say it right before it. How about Devin White?
I'm not a huge fan.
No.
I'm not a huge fan. Here's what I think, Neil. I think they're going to do everything in their power. They will not touch Robert Hunt or Christian Wilkins compensatory pick. So what does that tell us? They're not going to spend over 16 or 17 million on one singular free agent. But it doesn't matter where they are because they don't want to affect those two costs.
Right.
So when I look at it, I can see them. It's why, I did top 30 free agents I would target, and I basically did 3 players at 10 different positions. And it's why on that list, I even had guys like, perfect example. Here you go. We need linebacker help. Why pay 16 to 18 million for Patrick Queen when you can probably spend 8 million in total and bring in Drew Tranquill and Willie Gay? Yeah. Those are the type of moves I see. Like high impact. They're trying to get as high of an impact player as at right of a cost. That's what it feels like we're entering to. And the only way we get a player that we're going to sign for 18 or 20 million is if we trade for them and extend them, because then it won't affect us.
See, here's what I think I'll say. And I like Pat Queen more than most people. And I've watched a lot of them because I live here and I see it. What I love about him more than almost as much as what I love first, two things that I love. That dude can get to the quarterback. Like we thought Jerome Baker was good at it here. Pat Queen is better than Jerome Baker was. He is one of the best pass rushing linebackers that I've seen in the recent years. What I also love about him is I think he's everything that we don't have on this football team. And when I talk about that, like we've talked about dogs and all that stuff on here, Pat Queen is a dog. Pat Queen is ferocious. He's a leader. I do like him. I don't like 18 million. If it's 15, I think I could get to there. It's a lot, and it does definitely impacts your compensatory pick formula. So you got to be careful of that. But I would just say that I don't think you're far off. I'm thinking of linebackers that could be available maybe via trade. And, there's not that many guys that come to mind. One guy that does come to my mind, I'm going back to Carolina. Well, could they be interested in a guy like Shaq Thompson, maybe? I'm like, because there's just not a linebacker to me is like the tight end on offense. There's not that many great ones in the league anymore. But and I see CJ Mosley being released. Man, for me, that's kind of damaged goods there. I'll tell you what, get smart. If your window's now, man, I still believe Levante David or Bobby Wagner are players that could play. I still think for the cheap that those could be your best options.
I don't think Bobby Wagner's leaving
doesn't want to be here.
the West Coast.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be here.
Levante David is your only chance, and I think he wants to retire a buck.
Makes a lot of sense, and they're keeping everybody.
But you're right; those would be the moves to make, though. 1 year stopgap, so they don't affect your compensatory pick.
Yeah,
right.
Because I do think linebacker, honestly, man.
And they've gone after Levante a few times, right?
Yeah, I just like they need something more there. Like, so where they were with Baker, from what I heard was that they were down to give him $8 million a year, and he didn't want it. He wanted to see if he could get more in the market. Like, I see, for me, like it's good, and Baker did a lot of good things. And he's not a Ring of Honor player here, but he's like the Hall of Very Good for Miami Dolphins, right?
Yeah.
Like, good guy, checked a lot of boxes. But I think now that he's gone, the last thing you do is crawl back and bring him back. I think now you have to go find a guy.
I agree.
And look, and where the Dolphins are in terms of their draft picks, right? If you want to move back into the round 2 and pick up an additional second round pick, like the team that I look at, Reason, is the Giants. If the Giants go get a quarterback at 6, right? Because they're rumored to be the JJ bandwagon drivers. They have 2 picks in the second round, 39 and 47. If they're willing to give us both of those for pick 21, I would do it in a second and have 39, 47, and 55. And that way, like the way I look at it is you could go get a starter like a Zach Frazier. You could get an edge rusher, right? And then you could go get a Peyton Wilson to be your linebacker. And I think that would be very attractive. But like there's moves you have to make moves. Like
my thing is, Neal, we just talked earlier. I brought it up. Greer doesn't draft interior offensive linemen in the first round. How often does he move up and down the draft board too?
He doesn't. And
remember, they got scared off for adding a little bit more to the worst pile. And what happened? They ended up getting jumped one spot by the Bucks, and they got an all-pro right tackle, and we got left sitting on our hands, and we had to wait 4 years to see something out of Austin Jackson.
You're 100% right. And honestly, like I'm interested to see what they do, because I'm hoping that this draft could be a tendency breaker, where I do think the Dolphins are going to have a lot of interest at 21. I think that is like going to be where, like I just said that a great player is going to fall in their lap, but I think around there is where great players stop falling. And I think
and that might be where a team makes a move for a Bo Nix or a Penix.
A Bo Nix or a Penix, or if one of them go in front of us, somebody who has no right like when I did my mock draft, Dallas Turner has no right being on the board at 21. No right. He's a top 12 player in this draft for me, but he was there at 21. Jared Verse could fall. Latu could fall. If you're a team looking for a pass rusher, if you're a wide receiver team, and what happens is we know the 3 that are rumored to go in the top 10, but if the Saints pick Brian Thomas, the Colts take Adonai Mitchell, and you're the Chiefs at the back end of round 1, and you really want to get Xavien Worthy, maybe you have to play a steep price tag to move up and get them. And that's where they have to pay attention and be open and explore all options, because I think that the worst strategy they can have is to go in and just take who the best player
I agree.
is. It's have the ability to see what makes this team better now and what helps. Because I here's another thing we don't know. We don't know what holes they're going to have. Something tells me that there's no way in hell in free agency they're going to be able to fill all their holes. There's a lot of holes there right now,
Yeah.
and that I'm going to keep saying that Wilkins domino's got to fall before we know what the hell we're working with.
Listen, you might not even have to use 21, but a team I'd be hitting up who needs relief too. I mean, are we forgetting that the Saints have Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz, and they need to save money? And if they're not giving up an offensive lineman, let me ask you this: would you target? We're talking about a linebacker again. You probably wouldn't even have to give up 21 or 55. Would you target a guy like Demario Davis or Pete Werner, who's gotten better since he came in?
Yeah, I love Demario Davis, but man, there's a lot of tread on those tires, man. He's been in the league
That's what I'm saying, for cheap, right? Like you're only giving up a 5th or 6th knock next year, not even this year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would definitely.
That's what I'm saying. You wouldn't even have to give up the 21 or 55th would have to be given up probably for an Eric McCoy or Cesar Ruiz because they're contracted and they're elite at their position.
Right. No, 100%. I think that's definitely an avenue to explore here. They need to add a line. They could add 2 linebackers, and because David Long Jr. is gone after this year. He's on the cheap here right now for what he played last year.
That's why I got a feeling, Neil, and I brought up Patrick Queen. I have a feeling they're going to try and get someone to get out ahead of it, and I don't know whether it's in the draft or trade or free agency, but it just seems like they, next year you look at 2025, who do we have on our roster at linebacker? Channing Tindall?
Right.
That's it. You know what I mean?
Right. No, and it's a position where, unfortunately, I like Adrian Cooper a lot in the draft from Texas A&M. I like Jeremiah Trotter Jr., but I've soured a little bit on him. I do like Peyton Wilson. I worry about his injury history.
That's the thing. If he stays healthy, he could be special, bro.
A guy who I think is going to be a better pro than he was collegiate with a lot of tools is Junior Colson from Michigan.
What about Trevin Wallace from Kentucky?
I'm a huge Trevin Wallace. Yeah, he's one of my favorite guys. And then I like
Tommy. And Tommy Eichenberg.
No Eichenberg. He's on my board.
He's better than Liam. And Cedric Gray from North Carolina is decent too.
Oh, Cedric Gray is a really good player.
Yeah.
A really good player. I like those guys. Here's what this is the year when you want that 3rd round pick, man, to get a linebacker. It's the year when you want.
Exactly it, bro.
Right. Because I think if you don't get Adrian Cooper, you're kind of overdrafting at 55 a little bit.
I agree.
But if you're picking 70, you're getting a steal with one of those linebackers. Name. And
even Tommy?
I think Tommy's going to be around 4 or 5, to be honest.
I think Tommy's going to be better than Liam for sure.
Man. Sure. I think maybe you could draft him and keep one Eichenberg jersey and let him play right guard and linebacker for us. That's just, I told you this in private, and I mean this, and it was a good point. I disagree with it, but I was told by somebody that, Neil, you were very hard on Austin Jackson on Fin Too Deep. You had written him off. You had said he's one of the worst players in the league. And he had a huge year this year.
He was until McDaniel's staff came here.
So what happens if the same thing happens with Liam Eichenberg? Hey, I've been wrong a lot more than I've been right, probably.
I can answer that question for that person if they're watching right now. Go back to when we signed McDaniel. I sat up here and I told each and every one of you Austin Jackson was going to work out under Mike McDaniel. Why?
Right.
Because of the traits. When you looked at him, when you look at the feet, the athleticism, the ability to get to the second level, the size, his age, he hadn't grown into his grown man strength yet. He looked like a very poor man's version of Trent Williams in terms of traits. And you saw what they did with Trent Williams. And that's why I said Austin Jackson, if you look at the tape and you see the traits, it was perfect for what Liam Eichenberg, it's been more of a struggle. Why? Because he's not the athlete, right? Yeah. He's got short arms. He doesn't have quick feet. You know what I mean? He's very inconsistent squaring guys up. He up here, in terms of a football IQ, sometimes it looks like the elevator doesn't go all the way to the top. And we got this guy, calling out protections and IDs, right? So
right.
Again, that's why you don't look at PFF grades, people. You watch the film. The film will tell you things and will tell you scheme fits and all that kind of jazz. So let's continue on here. 708 people on X are watching right now.
Ooh.
501 on YouTube for a total of about 1,215 people between two platforms are watching us right now. Shout out to each and every one of you. You mentioned his name. We're going to bring it up. It's since been deleted by Ryan Fowler, but the internet lives forever. Ryan Fowler had tweeted out today this. Sources: West Virginia interior offensive lineman Zach Frazier has top 30 visits scheduled with the Bears and the Steelers. He's also had formal meetings with the Bears, the Lions, the Bengals, the Cowboys, the Buccaneers, the Chargers, and the Miami Dolphins. Now, we can also confirm that we know it came out during the combine that they had met with Jackson Powers Johnson.
Right.
So now we've met with Zach Frazier. Now I think now that I've actually read it out loud, because me and you were like, why did Fowler delete this, right? I think he deleted it because of the top 30 part, because some teams want to keep those top 30 visits quiet. For example, I'm going to tell you a story here. Hold on, check this out. One of my sources. See, this is what happens when you're too big on players and everyone knows it. One of my sources last year knew that we snuck in Devon Achane for a very private workout, and they didn't tell me till after the draft, because they're like, there's no way you would have kept the lid on it. And the team wanted to keep it very, very secret. So much so. Do you remember when we took Cam Smith and McDaniel looked like he was moping? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Why he was moping?
He wanted A-Chain there.
He was trying to press for us to take Achane in the second. He was in love with him through the draft process. We brought him in for a private workout that only a few people knew about, and they didn't want it getting out.
Well, and this is one of the things people are always like, oh, where do you get information? You got to be careful. And look, I don't want to get anyone in trouble for sharing what they did. I think what the takeaway from this is that the Dolphins have met with the best two center prospects in this draft, and the gap between them, even though people won't think Zach Frazier is not far off of Jackson Powers.
Always draft wrestlers in the interior, baby.
I honestly, I would say this, and I mean this: trading back and getting Zach Frazier at 33 with an extra pick.
He won't be there at 55, eh, Neil?
Nah, I thought he would be, but I would trade back and get him at the top of, let's just say Carolina wanted to get up for a receiver. Give me pick 33 where I get Zach Frazier and I pick your first third round pick. I'd rather have that than Jackson Powers Johnson at 21 at this point. And that's not a knock on Powers Johnson. That's more of,
we understand Greer, and he ain't drafting an interior lineman at 21. That's us knowing that.
And I think, like a Jackson Powers Johnson, Zach Frazier is a attitude changer for your whole line unit. And I think I'll say it. I think he's a mean son of a bitch, and I think he's actually meaner than Powers Johnson.
I agree.
And then we just found this out, is that he is named Zach after Zach Thomas because his dad was a huge Dolphins fan, which is pretty cool. I like that lineage. I think that's cool. If dad would be proud of you, kind of thing. But what I think this is you get a guy like Zach Frazier snapping the ball to Tua. Those big defensive tackles that are chasing down Tua are going to have to deal with one mean menace right in front of them. And I think Zach Frazier, if I did a draft board for Dolphins only, he'd be one of the top 5 players on that draft board for the Miami Dolphins.
And, bro, I know we don't think he's going to get there, but if he fell to 55,
it's steal.
What a home run. But if Creed Humphrey didn't make it past 50, he ain't making it to 55.
But you'll agree with me here, and this is what I was saying. Like, a lot of people think I'm crazy because I'm now starting my movement that I don't think the Dolphins are going to go offensive line round 1. But we've talked about this guy ad nauseum and how underappreciated he is in this cycle. If you go get a defensive tackle or pass rusher 1 and you come back at 55 and you get Cedric Von Pron, I'm texting you, man. That's a home run pick.
Yeah.
Right?
He's been overanalyzed. He feels like one of the guys that's been overanalyzed.
He's going to be a 10-year starter with multiple Pro Bowls and have a hell of a career, and people are overlooking him because of recency bias. But, that's where it's like, I get that you want the guy that's on the top of Daniel Jeremiah's draft board, but if you put the work into it yourself, you'll realize that the gap between him and Cedric Van Pran is 30-some picks, and the play on the tape isn't that drastic.
I'll bet you one better. If you had a 4th-round pick, because I don't think he gets to the 5th, but if you had a 4th-round pick or a 3rd-round pick, Matthew Lee from Miami, all you Hurricane fans, him in the 4th would be fantastic in the 4th, but we don't have a 4th-round pick.
Right. I do like Matt Lee a lot. I like Dylan McMahon from NC State as another guy in the middle round.
He's awesome. You know what the thing is, bro? I think you know why people have soured on Van Pran? Because when you talk about McMahon, when you talk about Frazier, when you talk about these are guys who they think could probably play guard too.
Right.
That's what I think. Van Pran is like Humphrey, center. Like that's it. Like when you look at his length and when you look at what he is and his lack of athleticism, he's a center. He's nothing else. And I think when everyone's looking at, especially JPJ can play every interior offensive line. That's what I think everyone's getting caught up on.
Yeah, I see. And I'm with you, and I like those guys. I think what happens though too, man, is when you are the guy who's the leading candidate to be the first in this position when the football season and college season starts in September, you have nowhere to go but down, and we see it all
Yeah.
the time. Like really good players get overanalyzed, they fall in the draft, Rob Gronkowski, and they fall into the second round, and then they become great players, right? Like sometimes, like I think the evaluation process is amazing. And I
Yeah.
think the Senior Bowl is fun, and the scouting combine is. Sometimes the best scouts is watching your naked eye when you watch Cedric Van Pran line up against Alabama, and you're like, wait, who the hell is number 55? That center from Georgia, right?
Yeah.
And like, and that's where, so like, that's how I always got is I watch the naked eye, and then I dig into the players that catch my naked eye. And then look, I'm not going to say I don't go to like people like Mel Kiper's board and say, damn, Mel's got this guy. I've never really heard of him. Let me dig into him. But like that, like to me, man, like there's so many options for offensive line in this draft. Like there's guys like Dominic Puny from Kansas
Yeah.
who are
Kansas
guys that are
guard.
plug and play. He's a
Yeah.
day one starter for somebody at guard. He's a mean SOB. He'll kick you in the face while you're down. There's Brandon Coleman from TCU, who I think is a day one starter. There's guys that you can develop. Xavien
Mason
Howard,
McCormick from
Del,
South Dakota State. No one's
yeah,
going to talk about him.
Delmar Glaze from Maryland's a guy that can play multiple positions.
Yeah.
And I think we'll
What do you have him as, a tackler or guard?
Who?
Glaze.
Guard, but I think he could kick into center too.
What do you think of Zach Center?
I think he's a stud. He's coming off a serious injury. I think
Yeah.
whoever drafts him probably at the back half of round 3 is going to get an absolute steal.
Yeah, there's even late guys like when you talk about like Jacob Monk and
Yeah.
CJ Hansen from Holy Cross because it's not a big, because it's not a huge.
Jeremy Flax from Kentucky is another guy that I like late.
Yeah.
It's a great draft for the offensive lineman, man. That's where, like, if it's the
Sticking with Miami, Xavien
Cohen for sure, man.
Yep.
I mean, and that's where it's like I love a lot of those names. I know that you could trade back, get another day 2 pick, and still get one of those top guys.
Yeah.
Mahogany, Christian Haynes. There's so many good players in this draft, like that. We could talk about it ad nauseum, and that's where. But I'm with you. I think that the way the Dolphins draft is, they like a guy that they can count on as a guard year one, and potentially kick out the tackle. And
I think tackle is the only what you just talked about. I think that's the only O-line option at 21 is a guy who can play tackle in year 2 and play guard in year 1.
Fountainu and J.C. Latham are the two
That's
guys
basically,
that I can see them. They could take at 21.
Yeah, they better not reach on Graham Barton. That's all I know.
I don't think they will, but I will say, in being, the Ravens,
risen, bro.
The Ravens really like Graham Barton.
Yeah, since the Senior Bowl, that guy's stock is one of the highest trajectories on the offensive line since the Senior Bowl.
He's the guy that I'm actually going to go back and watch a little bit more of because I like him. I know people that I trust a lot that love him. Lewis Reddick. I
have him as my 5th guard.
Yeah, he's like my 4th, 5th guard too. And I've had people tell me that I'm way too low on him. So
yeah. There's just a couple guys above him I can't put ahead. Final thoughts before we get out of here, bud?
Dude, buckle up. The next few days are going to be freaking crazy. I think there's going to be relevant. I think it's going to be relevant Dolphins news every day for the rest till the league year starts. There'll be releases. There's going to be restructures. I think we have to be compliant in the next 4 days, right? So it's going to have to happen. I mean, they're going to make moves.
I just want to extend on that. The compliancy. Let people know.
4 p.m. on the 13th, right?
But also let people know we got to get to 0. We don't got to get the plus 70. You can go right back into the negative, and then you got to be compliant by September, right? That's basically how it works.
They're a Jalen Ramsey restructure and a Jeffrey Wilson release away from being cap compliant. And then what will happen is if they sign other players, they'll restructure or free and release other people.
Yeah.
So like all the Dolphins have to do is get under the cap by $1 by the 13th at 4 p.m. And once that is done, then they'll spend, but then they can still release players, and it works itself out. So all they have to do is be cap compliant when the new year starts,
Yeah.
and then they'll get an additional 18.5 after June 1 because of Xavien Howard's post-June cut.
Appreciate all you for coming through. We got 775 watching us on X, 510 watching us on YouTube.
Good
Smash
crowd
that
today.
like button. Subscribe if you are new. Appreciate each and every one of you for coming through. And we will see you guys on the next one. Remember, become a Patreon or a channel member. Access to insider info. We've had like 3 updates over the last 3 weeks, including an update yesterday talking about Tua's extension and what I'm hearing from the agent side of things. So go check that one out. Appreciate all you for coming through. And as always, fins up all day, every day until Margaritaville. They send the cease and desist our way, guys.